You've probably seen the headlines, right? That constant buzz around AI, and lately, a really intense focus on where all the data comes from to train these huge models.
Yeah, definitely.
And the reports about Meta AI maybe using pirated books. That's probably caught your eye. Makes you wonder what's really going on there.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. You're right. This isn't just some, abstract tech thing. It really hits at how we value creativity, how we protect it now.
Right. So for this deep dive, we're really focusing on that legal battle. Authors versus Meta AI. The whole thing is about whether Meta used copyrighted books, without asking, to teach its AI llama how to, well, talk and understand.
Uh-huh.
And to really get into it, we've been looking at this great piece from Vanity Fair. It lifts the lid on court documents that were sealed and even shows us some internal chats from Meta.
Yeah, our goal here is basically to cut through all the legal speak and the tech talk, so you can get the core arguments on both sides.
What does it mean for the authors, the ones saying their work got used?
Exactly. And what's Meta's side? Especially this pretty surprising claim they made about the economic value of these books.
Yeah, we need to unpack that one.
We're aiming to give you a clear, quick way to understand what's a really important and frankly complicated fight.
Okay, let's jump in. The lawsuit itself, Richard Cadre et al. V. Meta Platforms, it makes a pretty big accusation.
It really does.
The people suing, the plaintiffs, include some seriously respected authors: Andrew Sean Greer, Junot Diaz, Sarah Silverman.
Even National Book Award winners like Ta-Nehisi Coates, Jacqueline Woodson, it's a strong list.
They're saying Meta essentially torrented tens of millions of pirated books, took them without permission to train their AI models, llama included.
Think about it like, vacuuming up countless illegal digital copies to feed the machine so it learns language patterns.
And get this detail, they claim over 650 copies of their own books, the plaintiff's books, were used without permission.
Wow, that specific number, 650 copies of their work, really brings it home.
And the fact that these are such big-name authors, it just shows how seriously the writing world is taking this. It's not just about one person's copyright. It feels bigger.
It's about the value of the profession, potentially, and the sheer scale of it. Tens of millions, and the direct claim they went to piracy sites. That immediately makes you ask, did they try to get this data legitimately? What was the thought process?
So how's Meta fighting back? Well, they're leaning heavily on fair use. They argue the Llama project is highly transformative.
But right, their basic point is, look, we weren't copying these books for people to, sit down and read.
You're saying it's for training, teaching the AI language, a different purpose entirely.
Exactly. Now, fair use in copyright law, it's a real thing. It allows using copyrighted stuff, sometimes for criticism, commentary, news, teaching, research. The big question here, and what the courts have to figure out, is does AI training fit? Is it truly transformative? Did Meta add something new, change the purpose or character?
But the authors and the Association of American Publishers who are backing them, they're saying absolutely not.
They're pushing back hard.
Their argument in the legal brief they filed is that just systematic copying and encoding word by word into an LLM, that's not transformative.
They're saying it doesn't look like the usual fair use examples.
Yeah.
Quoting for a review or a search engine making an index.
Or even making software work together. They're saying this AI training is just massive copying, plain and simple, not fair use.
It really forces you to think about what these AI models are. Are they transforming the text in a meaningful way? Or are they just sort of creating this huge digital mashup that can then spit out similar stuff?
The authors seem to be saying the value is in their original words, and this scale of copying just tramples their rights.
Which leads us to maybe the most controversial part of Meta's argument.
Yeah, this economic value thing.
Right. They've actually argued in court filings that these pirated books, taken one by one, have no economic value as training data.
How do they figure that?
Their logic is basically, there's no market for licensing, just one book for AI training, because a single book doesn't add enough value to the whole model to be worth anything on its own.
So if one book is worthless for training, does that mean the author has no leverage, no economic say in this whole AI world? It sounds
Odd. It's definitely rubbing people the wrong way, that analogy someone used. Like, The New York Philharmonic saying they don't need to pay individual violinists because one violin can't play the whole symphony and the hall costs a lot.
Yeah, that captures how dismissive it sounds,
Yeah.
especially to the people who spent years writing these
You
books.
really seem to sideline the individual creative effort involved.
Absolutely. And it wasn't like everyone inside Meta was totally on board with this, from what the Vanity Fair piece
No,
suggests.
there was internal debate. It mentions a senior researcher, Melanie Cambador, who apparently said point blank, I don't think we should use pirated material. I really need to draw a line there.
And there was an internal slide deck warning about the risks of using LibGen, which is known for pirated books, and saying, basically, don't tell anyone we're doing this.
Right. So that suggests they knew at some level that this was tricky territory legally and ethically. Cambador's objection, the presentation, it shows there was internal awareness of the risks.
There's even that little story about an engineer feeling weird about torrenting stuff on a work laptop, mass downloading.
Yeah.
And another bit about researchers working to strip out the copyright pages from the books they downloaded. That feels pretty telling, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, Meta's lawyers might argue it was just data cleaning, but it could look like trying to hide where the material came from.
And the engineer's discomfort, that's just common sense, right? Using
Yeah.
pirated stuff, especially at work, feels wrong.
It highlights that gut feeling.
And then you think about the sheer amount of data they need for these LLMs. It's huge.
Massive.
And apparently the researchers kind of had this don't ask, don't tell approach. There's a message from one researcher, Guillaume Lampel.
It's actually saying, well, other big AI companies, OpenAI, Google, they were doing it, so shrug. We will too. And this was apparently in reply to Cambador asking if legal had actually okayed it. So the justification was everyone else is doing it. That points to maybe a wider problem in the industry, right?
Yeah.
The hunger for data, perhaps overriding the legal or ethical checks.
Because, yeah, just because others do it doesn't make it legal.
Not at all.
And then there's the whole who knew what question. The plaintiffs are pointing out inconsistencies.
Yeah, that's a key part of their filing.
They describe Mark Zuckerberg apparently testifying he didn't know about LibGen.
Despite internal documents suggesting his approval was needed for using big book data sets like this.
Right. And another witness also claimed ignorance about the data being pirated, even though they apparently got a memo saying it was pirated.
These kinds of discrepancies, well, they could be pretty important in court. They raise questions about awareness and decision-making right at the top. Was it deliberate? Was it negligence?
Interestingly, Meta's lawyers are also saying, look, it shouldn't legally matter how we got the pirated books,
Yeah.
whether we downloaded them from some site, or even if we hypothetically scanned the library books ourselves to get the same text. Their argument is the source isn't the key fair use issue.
Okay, so they're trying to focus the argument purely on the use of the material for training, not its origin story. But, using books from known piracy sites like LibGen, that could still affect how a court sees their good faith in the fair use analysis.
And for the authors actually involved in this isn't just legal theory, is it? Carmen Marie Machado, her books were apparently used.
Yeah, she spoke about it representing a decade of her life, her creative work.
And feeling violated that a huge company could just take it, feed it to a machine, without asking, without any thought for her effort.
That really humanizes it. It's not just about money, it's about respect for the work, control over your own creation.
And Margaret Atwood, she had that really sharp question. Would paying for the books, licensing them, actually kill these companies?
It's a fair question.
And the answer, internally at Meta anyway, seems to have been.
Yes.
One of their engineering directors apparently wrote that licensing even one book would wreck their whole fair use defense.
Wow. That's quite an admission. It really suggests that avoiding licensing wasn't just convenient, it was central to their legal strategy. That the fair use argument depends on not being able to license easily.
But then you have Mark Lemley, who used to be a lawyer for Meta.
Right, he has a different take.
He thinks the source, pirated or not, shouldn't matter at all in the law for fair use. He compares it to Google Books, scanning books, or search engines crawling the web, which inevitably includes copyrighted stuff people put up without permission.
So his focus is different.
Yeah, he's saying we should worry more about regulating the AI's output, what it creates, not the massive pile of data it learned from.
That's another way to look at it legally. Focus on the infringement risk and what the AI generates, not the training data itself, which is incredibly complex to police.
And we should remember, this Meta lawsuit isn't alone.
No, far from it.
There are, over a dozen other copyright cases going on against various AI firms involving musicians, artists, news outlets.
It's a huge wave of litigation. It really shows this is a fundamental clash across creative industries about AI.
Mhm.
It's forcing these big questions about art, literature, value in the age of AI.
It really is. And Meta, despite all this legal heat and the internal stuff, they justify Llama by pointing to its potential good uses.
National security, healthcare, nonprofits, they list potential benefits.
Although, as the Vanity Fair article notes, let's be real, they're also a massive for-profit company. They've invested billions they want to return.
And that's the tension right there, isn't it? The potential good AI could do versus the rights of the creators whose work is fueling it. Meta says Llama being open source helps everyone, but the authors are asking, at our expense.
And finally, what about the Authors Guild, the group representing lots of writers?
Their stance is pretty clear.
Yeah, they did a survey. Found the vast majority of authors think, yes, you need our consent, and yes, you need to pay us if you use our work for AI training.
Makes sense from their perspective.
Their big worries are pretty understandable, too. AI potentially replacing writers down the line and having zero control now over how AI uses their style, their stories, maybe even spitting out derivative works.
It taps into that core fear,
Mm.
devaluation and loss of control. Sam Altman from OpenAI even gave that example, didn't he? In AI writing metafiction that sounded just like Nabokov.
Exactly. That perfectly illustrates the concern AI learning styles so well it can mimic or replicate them without credit or compensation.
Yeah.
So, wrapping this all up, the main clash boils down to this. Meta saying fair use, it's transformative, and single books have no economic training value.
Versus the author saying, hang on, that's our copyrighted work. It has inherent value. You infringed, and you need to respect our rights.
And it is pretty startling, isn't it, that a cornerstone of Meta's defense is basically saying millions of books by famous authors are individually worthless for AI training.
That's the bit that really makes you stop and think. Worthless. It's a strong word in this context.
It really is. And
Yeah.
it leaves you wondering, okay, what does this case mean for the future, for creative work, for copyright law as AI gets more powerful?
And maybe even, what do we mean by value when we talk about machine learning inputs?
It's that balance, isn't it, between pushing technology forward and protecting the rights of the people, creating the culture, the content that feeds it all. Lots to think about there.